government that's been through 5 prime ministers in 14 years in power. Jill Rutter is a former UK Treasury official and senior fellow at the Institute for Government, a UK think tank. Lovely to have you, Jill. I know it's been a big night there in the UK. It's a good time to ask, who is Labor leader Keir Starmer, the man set to be the next Prime Minister? What type of government do you think he'll lead?
Very interesting. I mean, the watchword of the Labour campaign has been extreme caution. It's been possibly the most disciplined campaign we've ever seen, really sort of reluctant to go an inch beyond the commitments and their very limited commitments in their manifesto. So we're really all asking ourselves that question. I mean, one of the things we know, they're going to inherit a really difficult in-tray of issues left over, the sort of perilous state of some of our public services, poor economic performance, maybe turning the corner a bit. The Prime Minister was trying to fight on that prospectus, but it's going to be very, very difficult, and we really don't know. And it's sort of quite interesting to see. We start off today. We'll get the cabinet appointed this afternoon. So even though Labour's won, they've suffered a couple of quite high-profile losses from the shadow cabinet. So there'll have to be some juggling around that, and then we'll really see, Keir Starmer get going, because I think quite a lot of people still feel that even after this campaign, they don't really quite know what he wants to do. Labour just goes back to sort of quite limited pledges time and time again, rather than give you a real sense of how they'll confront the issues that pop up and confront any Prime Minister.
A satirical publication here in Australia this morning was running the headline, "POM's carrying on like the revolution is here after electing an inoffensive centrist lawyer," which I thought was quite amusing. He's not exactly a firebrand, is he, Sir Keir Starmer?
Well, he was in his youth. I mean, it's quite interesting. I mean, he, quite a lot of people digging about. He was, used to write for quite left-wing magazines, was a very distinguished human rights lawyer, was actually the sort of lefty lawyer that had been a bit of a bête noire for the Conservative government for the last 14 years. So he did, come from the sort of left of the party, but has definitely decided that the way to get elected is to move it much more away from the sort of Corbyn agenda of 2019. Though Jeremy Corbyn won his seat as an independent, we've just seen up in Islington taking on the official Labour candidate, because of course Keir Starmer expelled him from the Labour Party. So he's definitely been presenting himself as a moderate. Of course, one of the things the Conservatives have been saying is, this guy served in Jeremy Corbyn's cabinet. A lot of the Labour moderates, right-wingers, didn't serve in the Corbyn shadow cabinet. Can you really trust him? He actually ran for the leadership on quite a left-wing continuity manifesto, if you like, Corbyn without the sort of personal problems of Corbyn. And one of the things we have seen is that certainly over the stance on Israel-Gaza, quite a lot of people have decided to vote for other candidates rather than for Labour, and indeed they've been attacked on that by the Greens, who seem to have had really quite a good night as well.
What can we say about the Tories? The BBC is currently running the headline quote from Rishi Sunak, who said it was a sobering verdict. There's much to learn. I am sorry. It does beg the question, were they drunk this whole time if it's so sobering? Was this defeat somehow unpredictable, or was it underrepresented in some way? Was it somehow a surprise at all?
In terms of vote share, they seem to have actually done slightly better, perhaps, than people might have expected. But what they've really been very vulnerable to is the fact that a huge amount of the country seems to be prepared to use its vote, not to vote for their first preference, but to vote to get the Conservatives out. And that's why we've seen Labour really doing incredibly well on not a particularly staggeringly high vote share. It's going to provoke lots and lots of debates about the unfairness of our electoral system. For an awful lot of people, this election was a get Conservatives out election, and people have wised up on how to vote. There have been lots of tactical voting websites, lots of local campaigns running. This is your way of getting rid of your Conservative incumbent, and a lot of people seem to have taken that option.
What do you think Rishi Sunak will do now? Obviously, recriminations began even before the election. Ultra-Conservative MP Suella Braverman blamed Sunak for the loss even before a vote was cast. Is it likely he'll quit? It seemed like he was playing to lose, you might say.
Well, we don't tend to keep our leaders on after they lose. I mean, the question is, does he decide to quit today? By the starting gun on a Conservative leadership contest? Does he want to quit so much that they install a sort of interim leader while they do that? We've seen that happen in some cases before. Or does he do something more orderly? And quite a lot of the senior people in the party are saying, actually, we'll need to take some time to assess what's gone on, work out where the party goes next, how the party is going to cope with the fact that one of the really big stories of the night have been the high vote share, even if it's not converting into that many seats for Nigel Farage's Reform Party. So we may see sort of in slower time a Conservative leadership contest play out so that the Conservatives can really decide where they go now. One of the things that people are pointing out is that if you look at who's going to be returned as a Conservative MP, actually there are a lot of more centrist Conservatives who have won, who will be in that parliamentary party that decides who goes forward to the membership to be the next leader. But that means that the centre of gravity of the party in Parliament is very different from the party in the country, and particularly a party which is seeing itself hemorrhage quite a lot of votes. The Reform Party. The Reform Party's come second, done very well in a lot of Labour seats, is now poised as the second party in a lot of those. But it does seem to have had a major factor in knocking down the Conservative vote.
Speaking of Brexit, will Labour attempt to reconnect with the EU? Not formally, of course, but via diplomacy, by trying to sort of reduce some of the administrative and regulatory blocks that have become headaches for a lot of people in the UK that came about due to Brexit?
Well, it said it will try. I mean, we've heard from both Keir Starmer and his chancellor to be Rachel Reeves that they want to improve what they refer to as Boris Johnson's botched Brexit deal and do exactly that. But the trouble is the UK can't do that on its own. They'll need the EU to be ready to talk about redoing a deal that actually works really quite well for the EU. So it'll be very interesting to see whether they can make any headway. And of course, the EU itself is in a bit of a hiatus. They've just had European Parliament elections. We haven't had the new president of the Commission. Returning Ursula von der Leyen confirmed yet. New Commission won't really be in action till November. But politics in Europe is in a bit of turmoil as well after these European Parliament elections. France is in the middle of its two-stage election. We'll find out on Sunday what happens there, but it looks as though President Macron's going to emerge from that incredibly weakened. The German coalition is under deep pressure. Looks like it'll lose power next year. So it's a very uncertain, probably preoccupied with itself, Europe that Keir Starmer will have to deal with.
Jill Rutter, always a pleasure to have your analysis. A former UK Treasury official and senior fellow at the Institute for Government, a UK think tank. Very much appreciated.